Hello everybody, my turn next. Thank you, Ije. I really enjoyed your poetry there. My name is Jo Salter. I hope this is all working as it should do with this technology. I am the founder of ethical clothing brand called Where Does It Come From? And you may have heard of us because we're working with the group to make these fabulous, amazing t-shirts that we're all so excited about. So I've got 20 minutes to talk to you a little bit about my journey, I suppose, and how I got into ethical clothing and why and all of that stuff. So I hope it's interesting to you. I can get a bit passionate about it and maybe talk a bit too fast. I'll try my hardest not to do that. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to Sarah and to Nicola for pulling this together, because it's been an amazing event and such a great opportunity and an honour to hear women's voices and what women say when they speak. It's been really empowering. So I'm certainly enjoying it, and I hope that you enjoy what I have to say. Okay, so the first thing I suppose that I do have to say is please go and have a look at the site with the t-shirts on and order your t-shirt or make a donation if that's the right thing for you. Obviously there's no pressure, but I'll tell you a bit about the project and hopefully you'll feel that you want to do that. It's a fantastic idea that Nicola has come up with, to have a slogan tee all about empowerment, but with empowerment of women built into the actual product, which is something a lot of companies, a lot of organizations don't necessarily think about. You're probably aware of the various scandals that have happened over the last few years, and I won't name names, but some organizations have had t-shirts printed about women empowerment, about other issues, and of course the press have dug in and found out that the t-shirts have been created in factories paying slave wages and not using sustainable and fair practices at all, or dodgy materials or whatever. So anyway, so yes, please do go and order your t-shirt if you possibly can. I can promise you they'll be absolutely amazing, and the more you find out about their story, the more that you'll love them, which is where I'm coming from. So as I say, I'm the founder of an organisation called Where Does It Come From? Anyone who knows me will know that that's not a coincidence that it's a question, although I didn't realise it until fairly recently, but I ask a lot of questions. I'm just one of those people who asks a lot of questions, and as I've got older, I felt more able to ask questions. Some of the speakers today have been talking about how sometimes we do feel stupid when we ask questions, or not sort of able to ask questions, but as I've got older, I thought, what the hell, I'm going to ask questions if I've got questions. And the story goes for me that when I used to work in a large corporate company, and we were always running events, marketing events, shows, those kind of things, and t-shirts would just get churned out, like, let's everyone have a t-shirt, everyone wear a t-shirt, talk to the customers with this cool t-shirt on, and the event would be over, and hi Sarah, the event would be over and the t-shirts would be in the bin, or we get told to take them home, but when they've got a big logo all over them of a company that you work for, you don't necessarily want to wear them, apart from doing the gardening. But whenever I did ask my usual amounts of questions, where were these made, who made them, what are they made of, all of that kind of stuff, I didn't get any answers that made me feel in any way comfortable about that. So that raised a huge bunch of questions for me in my life. There's something that I was kind of there in the back of my mind for a while. So what happened was that I'd been involved in fair trade for a very long time. It's something very core to me, the whole idea of trade justice, and that came about because probably through school and hearing interesting speakers at school, but what the real turning point was when the Red Nose Day TV programs were on, and I was a teenager, and I do remember this lady who was from an African country, and she basically said, it's just luck, that you were born there and I was born here. And I just thought, yes, it is. It's just luck that we have comfortable homes and jobs and careers and education, and other women and people don't in other parts of the world, and that isn't fair. And I won't go into here why that's happened. You probably know as well as I do, but that is the way it is. So I think something like trade and business and supporting each other is something that we can do as a sisterhood, really, to help with that. So that had always been there, that fair trade thing. But when I became a mum, those questions about where things came from came right back into my mind again, because you're dressing these innocent little babies and you're thinking, well, what is this I'm putting on their skin? You know, what is this doing to their skin? And more importantly, were these clothes made by children somewhere else, or slaves, or people suffering? I don't want to dress my children in the product of suffering. So that's how it all came about, really, from the fair trade angle. And much more growing was the sustainability side as well. The more I found out about the climate emergency and those kind of things, so they very much came together. Anyway, so that's how it started. One fact that I know spoke very much to Sarah, and it's something that really defines me, is the 80-80, which is that 80% thereabouts of clothes that are sold in the Western world are bought by women, and 80% of garment workers in the world are women. So when we go out as women and we shop and we're looking for bargains and we buy things that came from slave labour, we are basically condemning our own sisters at the other side of the planet who are working in harsh conditions to make them for us. So that, again, that was something that was a kind of a kabing moment in my brain that made me think, oh my God, this is outrageous. So anyway, long story short, in 2012 I started setting up the social enterprise. Where does it come from? I had run another social enterprise before that called Fair by Nature, which was all about supplying school uniforms and uniforms to businesses. It didn't work because most schools have a tie-in with various uniform producers, and also it was just the market wasn't quite right for that kind of thing at that time. It probably would work better now, but at the time we couldn't make it sustainable to run as a business. So I set up Where Does It Come From? And it was a step forward as well, because Fair by Nature was just about fair trade and organic, whereas what I really wanted to do by the time I got to setting up Where Does It Come From is I wanted the whole story. So there was going to be a label on absolutely everything, and the customer was going to be able to scan that label in or type in the code and find out the whole story right back to the origins of the fibres. So that's what we started in 2013. Now I thought that would be fairly straightforward, and I found out quite quickly why it is that nobody else was doing it. It's not straightforward. To find out the origins, the farms of where things were grown is something that hasn't been clear. That kind of opaqueness about supply chains, as they're called, is something I've discovered, and I'm sure a lot of you already know. It's getting slightly better, slowly, but most big businesses, most big brands have absolutely no idea about the farms where their fibres in their clothes are born. They basically are buying swathes of fabric. They might know what the fabric is made of. They don't always even know where the factories are that the clothes are being made in, because factories subcontract quite often. So they might make a contract with one factory and they might subcontract it to another. So a supply chain is basically the chain of events that happens from the original fibre being brought into existence all the way through to when it arrives in your shopping bag. So they can be really convoluted, or they can be fairly straightforward. So if you're growing, if you've got a sheep in your back garden, lucky you, and you take the wool and you spin that and you weave that and you knit that into a jumper, that supply chain is pretty straightforward and well known. Oh, thank you, Andrea. I'm really glad, because I don't know whether my passion is interesting to other people. But yeah, so just say you have a sheep, you can make a jumper from beginning to end. And as a quick name drop, if you ever want to find out about something like that, go and look at the brand Ted and Bessie, which I love, which is an alpaca brand in the UK. They have alpacas in their field. They take the fibre, they make the jumpers and the scarves, and then you can wear it. They don't even dye them. The actual colour that the alpacas are. Anyway, that was a quick digression, and I better not because I've only got 10 minutes left. Okay, so in 2013 I set up, launched Where Does It Come From? We started up the year before, and by not coincidence, although it was a coincidence at the time, there was a huge disaster called the Rana Plaza factory disaster in Bangladesh, where basically a clothing factory fell down, killing I think it was something like 2,500 workers, and lots more were injured. I can't remember the number off the top of my head now, but they were buried in the rubble, these workers, and many were brought out. And at that time there was a huge realization within the clothing industry that this couldn't go on, and there are some amazing superheroes who have been pushing forward with this. And a campaign got started called Fashion Revolution, and I've been involved right from the beginning. And Fashion Revolution was about getting people to ask, who made my clothes? And that was all about, so if you ever see that sign, who made my clothes, that is about Fashion Revolution, and that is trying to say to people, you need to connect with the people behind your clothes, which of course is exactly what I was trying to do as well. So I jumped straight onto that one. It's absolutely amazing, and I've run lots of events with them and worked with them since I started up Where Does It Come From? So Where Does It Come From, as the name suggests, is about full and total transparency in the supply chain. And what I mean by that, as I say, is all the way through from fibres all the way through to the final garment. And that's what we put on. We put the code on our clothing and products that we create. And that's what we're going to be doing with the t-shirts that you buy. So there will be a QR code on the label. You'll be able to take your mobile phone, you'll be able to scan it, and you'll be able to see the whole story, the whole supply chain all the way through, and read about the people involved, see pictures, video, whatever, of all the people involved. So I'll go into a slight bit more detail on that. So Nicola came to me some time ago and we had this fantastic idea for the t-shirts. We spoke about it, and I spoke to a lady that I've worked with right since the beginning called Shailini Sheth Armin, who lives in India, and we've worked together on, I don't know, 25 productions over the last years, from scarves, shirts, loads of different things, bags, and we're working on some exciting things at the moment for Christmas. But Shalini was also very interested, and she and I spoke together about it, and we worked up a specification for Nicola for the t-shirts that are basically going to be using organic cotton from India, which will be knitted, and that's just like when you have a jumper and you knit it, but it gives it that little bit of stretch, just like your normal t-shirts, but they won't have any elastane in. It's purely organic cotton, and then they will be sewn into t-shirts in a woman empowered factory social enterprise in India. And Shalini runs a social enterprise called Moral Fibre that links that part of the supply chain together. So that's what you will find out about when the production goes ahead, and we'll be able to share all sorts of information about that. Anyway, I wanted to give you a little bit more of the story of Where Does It Come From and why I did it. So I'm talking full transparency, and that's sharing all of the information with all of the customers, and also making the productions as eco and ethical stroke fair trade as possible. So for example, when it comes to fibres, and I'll try not to be really long and boring on this one, but this is something really close to my heart, the more I found out about it. The story goes that many years ago, with cotton in particular, in India, they grew the cotton, but they weren't actually allowed to process it because they were part of the British Empire. The cotton was all brought to the UK and then worked in the mills here. And Mahatma Gandhi, part of the Indian freedom movement, was to put that power back into the Indian population to weave and spin their own cloth. And that kind of cloth is called khadi, Khadi, which is hand spun and hand woven, and it's traditional. And also it uses what we call native cottons. So the cottons that were grown in age-old times were able to adapt naturally to the environment that they grew in. So they didn't need to have loads and loads of water. You'll often hear of cotton being called the thirsty crop, but that's because we're not growing the right cottons for the right environment. So if you bring cotton seeds to the other side of the world and plant them there, or you try to mass produce them in a way that's not natural, then they will need lots of water and they will need lots of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. If you grow native cottons, then you don't need to do that. So we do quite a lot of our productions with these native cottons, which are also naturally organic as well, which means that they're not dirty and they're not thirsty, and when they biodegrade at the end of their life, they won't put nasty pesticides back into our soils. So it's much better for the planet. We also look at wools and recently done some work with hemp. So fibres are really super interesting, but also the other things that go into clothing. I avoid plastic where possible. So buttons, we use wooden buttons. Don't really like having zips. Some of the children clothing have zips, but we've used metal ones where we can. In the earlier days, I wasn't quite so aware of all of this, but I'm getting more aware of it now. And our designs for the last 3 or 4 years, we've not put any buttons or zips in anything. You know, we've got tunics that go straight over your head and they don't need anything. And we're actually working on some, this is top secret, pajama trousers at the moment, and we're looking at different kinds of elastic we can put in the waist that won't be plastic. So maybe a mix of organic cotton and rubber. Anyway, so that's that. The second thing is who made it? Who made the clothes? We want our clothing to be made in a way that has positive impacts on the community. So we work with social enterprises, and we focus on social enterprises that support vulnerable communities, particularly women, people who are disabled, people who are marginalised because they live rurally, and that kind of thing. And thirdly, and also to me really importantly, we try very hard to build a connection between you, the wearers, and the people making the clothing and what they're made of. So if you look at the label of your garments, you'll quite often see made in such and such a country. That only means the last country that any work was done on it. You don't get to see anything else, any other countries involved in that. We want to share that information, and we want you to understand who the people are who made your clothes and the impacts on the people and the planet. And my belief, my personal belief, is that if you know these things, if you've seen pictures of the people who make your clothes, if you understand about the impacts, then you will love your clothes more, because it's just like when you grow your own vegetables. I think you think that your vegetables taste better because you know that you grew them, you know all the work that went into it, the rain that rained on it, etc. It's more of a deep personal connection, and that is what I want to bring people through the stories behind their clothing. So when you're buying your clothing, I would ask you to think about those things and build those kind of connections. We know when we've worn a dress to a wedding or something like that and we've had a wonderful time, we will love that dress more, and that's because we've got a connection with it. And that's how things were in the past. People built connections with clothes. They knew the dressmakers, they knew the things that they were made of, and it was a personal connection, and I want to bring that back. So these t-shirts that we're working so hard on, they are you're going to be able to build a personal connection with where they came from. Hopefully you'll wear them, and because of the slogan, that will give you a personal connection as well, because it will be something that speaks to you as a woman or as a man about women's empowerment and how change can happen when women speak. So I would say my parting words, I have 1 more minute according to the clock, are the best way to save the planet when it comes to clothing is to buy less clothing. It might seem a strange thing for me to say right now, but what I want people to do is to buy less clothing, but to buy better. So buy where you know the story, buy when you know it's going to have a positive impact, and really invest something of yourself in the garments that you buy, and be sure to make them make you happy, or to help them make you happy by loving them. And if you buy things that you know only had a positive impact on those making it, who were probably women as well, somewhere at the other side of the world, if you know that, and you know that the fibres, when this garment reaches the end of its life, are going to actually support the environment and not feed nasty, horrible chemicals into the environment, then I think that will make you happier as a person, as a woman, and you'll be able to contribute something and wear those garments with joy. So please order, pledge for your t-shirt, and thank you so much for listening to me wittering on about how building connections with your clothing can help the world. Thank you.